Thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to tell you about the work we are doing in this field. Let me start by, sorry Ignacy, correcting you slightly. We are not only representing funders but also performers, which is rather important. Let me start by briefly introducing Science Europe, that you know who we are, what we do. Science Europe is a science policy organization that represents, as I said, funders and performers throughout Europe. We currently have 34 member organizations from 27 countries. And the work of Science Europe is mainly based on a roadmap that has been developed 5 years ago when Science Europe has been funded. This roadmap sets priority topics, priority action points that is worked on by working groups within Science Europe. These working groups are made up of staff, expert staff from our different member organizations that they decide which working groups they want to send staff to. And they work on topics that has been considered as important topics within our work. One of these working groups is the working group on research data management protocols, which I'm the Science Europe staff member who is supporting the working group. Why are we dealing? Oops, sorry. Why are we dealing with this topic? The topic is gaining more and more importance, definitely in the context of the Open Science agenda. As Paul just mentioned, and thank you very much for these interesting survey results, there seems to be quite a demand from research communities to get some more guidance on this topic. Science Europe believes that the development of open science should be done in a bottom-up approach, done by the scientific communities, that they should be part of shaping the future of open science. And we discovered that the discussion around open science mostly deal with topics such as infrastructures and governance. And there's not really a solution for data management up to now, which is needed. Otherwise, there is this one piece missing. I've seen that the LERU roadmap has the same approach, saying we have to consider all aspects to make it a success. So the approach that we are taking is supposed to merge a bottom-up approach with the researchers in the driving seat, together with a top-down vision on what funders would need and what funders want and need to ensure efficacy and accountability of research, funded research. Why are we as an organization, a pan-European organization, dealing with this topic? First of all, given our membership, which is composed of funders and researchers, we think that we are really well positioned to develop an approach that is accepted by both sides. It's open science relevant, and open science is one of our priority topics. There's an obvious need to carry this topic forward, again, as Paul's survey results have shown. And it's one of Science Europe values to promote scientific freedom and researcher empowerment and get researchers involved in policy development. About the working group itself, it has been created with the mandate to continue engagement that Science Europe has been had for quite some years already in research data activities. But this time they have been asked to have a very special focus on open science and deal with the detail of how to promote the topic. Our mission is to develop and advocate the concept of what we call disciplinary research data management protocols. They're supposed to be a pragmatic solution and shall ensure the implementation of data management plans. Again, we think the fact that we have funders and researchers also in the working group, not only in Science Europe membership, but as well researchers as funders, performers and funders have decided to send their staff to the working group, increases the credibility and the acceptability of the results we hope to achieve. For the members of our working group itself, the research funders send staff from organizations that already have introduced data management plans or are considering to introduce them, so they're working on the topic. Research performing organizations send research staff that has experience in dataset management or archiving, or staff with research database management responsibilities. The idea of our work is that we want to formulate protocols that would give a framework for researchers in the specific disciplines on how to develop their data management plans. These protocols are supposed to be guidelines and shall support researchers and funders and make their life easier, meaning researchers don't have to reinvent the wheel every time they have to do a new data management plan. They get a framework, a structure that's partly pre-filled, or at least gives an idea on which questions they should answer for funders to be satisfied with the information they get, and for funders that they do not have to evaluate very different individual protocols and data management plans, but they get a structured approach that's easier comparable and easier to evaluate. There's something wrong. Oh, okay. As data management plans in research become the main tool to enforce open science policies and policies on research data management directed to researchers, our intention is to specify the provisions of detail that researchers are supposed to give in their data management plans. And with our project, we aim to monitor and foster the data disclosure and sharing. We see that more and more research funding organizations require data management protocols in order to give the funding. Prominent EU example, Horizon 2020, when they introduced their open data policy, they asked for mandatory data management plans. And we've seen in our research that more and more research funding organizations and the European Commission are creating and reviewing templates, but still they are too varied at the moment to be comparable. The framework that we are developing at the moment, and let me stress what I'm talking about is really work in progress. We are halfway through the mandate of our working group at the moment, or 2/3 through the mandate. So I only can talk to you about the work we're currently doing. We don't have results yet. Is that we want to develop a framework that will be agreed upon by the Science Europe members, which is a rather geographical spread already, and that will set a number of minimal requirements that data protocols should have. We know that we do not reinvent, that we do not invent the wheel at the moment. There are lots of data management plans and protocols out there already, but they're so diversified that we're trying to find common points and give a framework to be worked on afterwards. The advantage we see in this approach is that we want to prevent situations where researchers find their top-down requirements too burdensome, not applicable, or not useful. So we want to increase the acceptance by researchers and better engagement by research and data management plans. And we want to provide them with a learning vehicle, giving them a framework they can work on and that can be approved in the future. For the funders that are apparently still often unsure about the best way to manage their open data policy, the approach would give the possibility to have a more structured approach. It also reduces processing costs, and they can base their evaluation on a framework that has been set and that's accepted throughout the community. To be a bit more specific for researchers and research performing organizations, this approach intends to give a framework that researchers can refer to and follow instead of reinventing the wheel every time they have to hand in the data management plan, give them a structured approach that they just have to fill in. We think that these kind of protocols will raise the quality standard of data management plans and should be regarded as useful, and it is less burdensome for the researchers. And we hope that this will counter the situation we have at the moment, that many researchers see research management plans as just another bureaucratic requirement. As Paul said, many of researchers just have a data management in their head. They don't bother to write something down, to have a structured approach. For the funders, they don't have to check thousands of individual DMPs that look all different, but they have, according to their discipline or their domain, one framework that can be compared against others, meaning that data management plans will not enter the paper tiger, but be really a useful instrument for everyone. What we did in the working group, we had a rather small amount of time. Our mandate is just for 7 months. We started in September and we're supposed to deliver first results in March. We divided the working group into task forces in September. They've been working on different topics like the framework elements, the data character, how a DMP should be drafted, on how to integrate the FAIR principles and data management plans, on the cost aspect, which as you already heard is kind of complicated and a complex topic, responsibility for data, and the workflows within research data management. And we had a fifth task force that identified possible partnerships, communities for proof of concept. What we're doing at the moment, the task forces have completed their work beginning of December, and the work is currently being merged into a report that's supposed to set up a framework. And the framework is, while being set up, at the same time compared to existing models. We know that quite some communities have already some models in place or are working on them. And we are in contact with quite some scientific communities, such as Daria, Sesta, Elixir, the Netherlands archaeologists, and the ERACAPs, just to name a few. They have been contacted with an explanation of our approach, a draft framework concept, and we asked them what they think about it, if this is a valuable approach, whether they consider this as being useful, whether they think that the elements we tackle in our framework are the right ones, whether they want to see some other points stressed, some points they consider as less useful. And we asked them whether, in case they consider the approach useful, they would be ready to take our framework once this is finished, at the moment they just know the draft, and develop, with the help of this framework, first data management protocols. The reactions so far have been positive from the communities, saying that they do consider this approach as useful and that are definitely willing to look into it. I do not know yet how many communities really will go so far to develop a protocol based on our framework. We're waiting for answers at the moment. The intention is to have a final report ready by March. This report will will have the framework in it, the elements we think that should be in the data management protocol, as well as comparison with existing data management protocols and the answers we will get from the communities with the protocols they will set up. We are hoping to present our results at the RDA conference here in Barcelona in the beginning of April. Last but not least, I had a look, of course, at the LERU roadmap, comparing what LERU has done with the approach we've taken. Of course, the LERU roadmap is much broader than what we do. We really focus on one small detail. But for me, it seems that the core idea of our work can easily be found back in the LERU roadmap. It's the same idea behind the work that we're doing. Of course, supporting the reuse of data and fostering individual solutions from LERU point of view that would be for universities, what we are thinking of having individual approaches for the different scientific communities, because of course there is no one size fits all. These data management protocols and frameworks need to be tailor-made for scientific communities and different kinds of research. But I think the approach we're taking is pretty similar. And then I quoted two parts of the LERU roadmap that easily say the same, that of what we foster as well, that the development or the adoption of an institutional data policy has to be with accompanying guidance, and that it's important to have these for every university and for every research community. And that should be the researcher's responsibility that good data management practices are implemented from the outset of a research project. The same, Paul referred to this already, it is important to have an idea on how to manage its data as from the beginning of the project. So I think we've been working on this topic separately till now, but I see quite a lot of overlap now already. And with this positive note, I would like to thank you for your attention. I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, you have our website and my email address if you might have questions later. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I would like to ask you if you can ask us some more information about these domain data protocols. What are you talking about? About procedures or metadata, both, or something else? And also, how come you expect to reach the researchers, and to what extent researchers will rely on your proposals, as there are a wide range of options, a wide range of domains, and a wide range of different kinds of data sets and different kinds of dealing with data, and each domain have their own habits. So, yep. To what extent they will rely on your proposal?
To what extent they really the proposal, we will have to see, of course. We hope, given that we combine a really widespread membership within Science Europe already, widespread meaning geographically, disciplinary, researchers and funders, that once we come up with a proposal that will be accepted within the Science Europe membership, it will be accepted already in a broad range of the scientific community. The intention is to have this framework built up as a modular framework, meaning that we propose aspects that should be in a data management plan. But we are, of course, aware that this is really different for the different communities. There are different requirements, there are different kinds of data, different sets of data, different treatments of data. So we go with a modular approach, and each scientific community can have a look in the framework which they seem fit for their field of research, for their community, for their domain. Actually, our membership already is outside the universities. We do not represent any universities. We do represent research performing institutions outside and universities. I forgot to mention this in the beginning. Science Europe is also supported in its work not only by the working groups, but we have a scientific advisory committee which is made up of individual researchers that are asked for the different aspects of our work we do to give us input to evaluate our ideas and our work from the point of view of the researchers. And given that with this particular project, we reach out to different research communities and ask them for input and ask them for an evaluation whether this approach is valid and usable for them. I think that's a rather broad approach that we can take. Definitely, given the really short amount of time, this working group has a mandate of 7 months, with a really short for this extremely complex topic. So.
My question is toward how you define a scientific community. So I think it makes totally sense because biological data are probably very different from historical data, but even in biology, where I'm working in, you have so different kind of data, and I guess the data management plan will be different, and the needs for the storage and so on. So I wonder how you break down into the different communities.
At the moment, we're contacting the representatives of several communities. Like I said, we're making in contact with CESTA, with DARIA, with the ERA CAPS, which is plant science. So we're trying already with our proof of concept to spread within. We can of course not contact every single scientific community. That's too broad. We need to come up with a first framework. That's our goal till the end of our mandate in March. We want to have this evaluated by a group of communities, and we're trying to spread this in a way that we just do not tackle like the social sciences or the health sciences. We try to reach as many as we can. And we hope that our mandate will be prolonged at the end of March and that we can go much more into depth afterwards. We know that what we're doing now is a first step and is setting up the basics, and we hope to be able to continue.
I would like to raise a very complex question without expecting you to answer it, just because it's very, very complex. Maybe we can discuss it in the panel afterwards or the next month. So, you are going, not you, with these initiatives, people or institutions are going to produce some more data contained in the protocols. So, let's take a look at what could happen after 5 years of collecting protocols. Are you aware of the fact that this amount of data then should also be accessible? Who has the right to go and access this data and evaluate them, reanalyze them? How is the situation from the legal point of view? We are going to collect protocols and data management plans all over Europe concerning process activities that are raised and initiated in all countries of the European Union and outside too, that belongs to different legal situations. Who will have the access on this data? Who will restrict the access, and who has the possibility to delete this data? It's a very complex question. Eh?
Indeed. And I'm afraid I have to reaffirm what you said. I won't be able to answer this question completely. One part of our work, one of our task force was to look into the FAIR principles, which is about, as you know, accessibility of data and the findability and reusability of data. I think you raised the most difficult point already. I think the legal requirements differ quite a lot among the member states, perhaps even between the different institutions. If they have their own set of rules, they have their set of rules. I guess that would need a pretty long-term process of alignment of rules, which I don't know how quickly this could happen, given the complexity of the European law system. But it's an absolute valid point. We're working on collecting data and making data accessible, but there is no clear vision on to what extent and when and how this will be possible.
Thanks. But perhaps I could, if I may, ask a question really that I posed at the start of the morning, and maybe it's a question we might want to think about during the day as we hear our colleagues share their ideas and participate in the breakouts this afternoon. It's one about leadership. So who in your, if you think of your organization, where you're based, and the way that it's organized, who is best placed, which body, which group of people in your organization is best placed to take a leadership role in changing the culture or introducing the culture change that's required in order for us to work effectively in a data-driven environment? In my country, in the UK, if you looked at a similar movement, which is the open access movement for open access to publications, and you looked at who has led that movement, it isn't research performing organizations, actually. People like me say it should have been, we should have done more, we should have got there first. It wasn't universities. It was research funders who set requirements in their funding policies. People like the Wellcome Trust, people like the research councils. And these have been taken up by other global funders like the European Research Council. But it was research funders that led the change in my country. Do you think in a research data space, it's research funders that will similarly take the lead, or is this a challenge to universities, to research performing organizations, to take the lead in research data, which they clearly haven't done for open access to publications?
To be honest, I think that's a shared responsibility and an approach that should be shared among the two of them. Of course, funders are in a pretty, let's say, strong position. They can set a policy, and if a researcher wants the funding, he has to somehow comply with the policy that exists. On the other hand, acceptance is rather generated if you have the researchers in the driving seat. If they see what they're required to do helps them, makes life for them easier, what we're hoping to do with these templates. That's why we think Science Europe as an organization is in a pretty good position to work on this topic. We combine those two. We have the researchers also within the working group, the performers, that give their input, that have a look at what is feasible, what would be useful for them. And then we have the funders that can have a look on how this can be implemented. So I wouldn't say there is one person or one organization or one group of organizations that should take the lead. I think that should be a combined approach.
How do you think the Project LEARN could help your organization to give some impulses in creating policies that could be helpful in the member states?
I hope so. We have been in contact with the European Commission and the European Research Council. We have invited them to one of our meetings, presented our ideas, and learned about how they deal with the topic at the moment. And we've seen quite some common points there, and we've been reassured that the way we're going is a good way to proceed. They've shown a clear interest in having like a more general approach to the topic. So I hope if we get a certain acceptance within our members and this idea might spread, that there is definitely a chance to influence this on a higher level.
Just a quick follow-up comment in relation to dissemination and communication efforts, which are going to follow both the conclusion of this work here with Science Europe and also the LERN project. You've talked, Marie, about the importance of perceived elimination of bureaucracy. There's, any attempts to implement cannot be perceived as top-down, cannot be perceived as new bureaucracy. Do you think, therefore, it would be helpful for the projects to look at coordination and alignment of dissemination activities to make sure that it's clear that the core messages are the same here, the core objectives are the same here, and these are not, in fact, competing directives, they are, in fact, complementary?
From looking at the LERU roadmap and comparing this with the work we do, I think there definitely are so many points in common that would make sense. Yeah.